even though like everything is incredibly boring right now, and like you were saying, Brian, a lot of folks have checked out. It's usually, and especially negative too, it's usually a good time to stay clued in and watch for signals and setups to fire. So for me, I'm pretty much seeing, are they going to retest this 25K level, and can they break it? If they can't, particularly in the next 2 weeks, this could eventually turn into trend continuation to the upside. It's hard to really make that argument right now with the weakness that we're seeing, but that's kind of what I'm thinking when we're looking at this from a bigger picture. As you can see in here, these vertical red lines are eclipses, both lunar and solar, and we're coming into another one of them. The black line below is the 4-year cycle projection on Bitcoin. The one below that is the Sun-Jupiter cycle. That's pretty much a faster version of this one. This one's 4 years. This one is 400 days. And then we have all of our outer planet ingress points down here at the bottom. So just looking at the bigger picture and the 4-year cycles, we're coming into seasonally a prime buying opportunity, and they never make it easy, but the chart does not look fantastic. But we are holding this 25K level. That's probably the most significant level right now on Bitcoin. And if they can't take out that level, especially in the next couple of weeks, it'll be a pretty pretty strong case for the bulls. I mean, it looks pretty clear like it's a head and shoulders that's forming. But if the energy that comes in over the next couple of weeks can't inject enough fear and uncertainty and just insanity to really take out that level, it's going to be a big tell. And yes, stuff can still happen through November, December, and even January, but there really aren't a ton of major astro or timing signals that I would expect to inject a major amount of energy into the markets. And specifically with crypto, those signals are much more magnified than you would see in a lot of other markets, just with the volatility factor. So it's a lot easier to use these kinds of signals and studies on Bitcoin and crypto just because of the volatility factor. So even though like everything is incredibly boring right now, and like you were saying, Brian, a lot of folks have checked out. It's usually, and especially negative too, it's usually a good time to stay clued in and watch for signals and setups to fire. So for me, I'm pretty much seeing, are they going to retest this 25K level, and can they break it? If they can't, particularly in the next 2 weeks, this could eventually turn into trend continuation to the upside. It's hard to really make that argument right now with the weakness that we're seeing, but that's kind of what I'm thinking when we're looking at this from a bigger picture, and the fact that we don't really have much for outer planet ingresses, other eclipses, or anything. Their next set of eclipses are going to be occurring in late March and early April next year, which will probably be really close to the halving. So I found that interesting. And also, it's the kind of the second leg of this W that forms on the 4-year projection. Having that come in right there, and then also coinciding with the halving is that's interesting. And then Jupiter is going to be changing signs shortly after that into late May. So really until the end of the year, the next 2 weeks are going to be a big tell for me. And if they can really take out this level. So that's kind of what I'm watching for on Bitcoin in general. There's really not a ton for big signals the rest of the year. And honestly, it's kind of a relief because everything that happened in 2020, 2021, 2022 is a little less. It's kind of nice to have some time where we're not just having an absolute shit show of astro events. Even though this whole decade is fairly charged, there's not a ton to really say here in the immediate short term. Even in 2024, there's not a lot. 2025 is when, things are going to get wild again. And you can kind of see that with all of the outer planets that are going to be changing, and then seeing the first peaking process of Bitcoin coming in through spring of 2025. That's also aligning with an eclipse and also aligning with Neptune changing signs. So when I see these overlapping signals, especially unrelated, when you're looking at just like a 4-year price study, eclipses, outer planets changing signals, like I know anytime from like mid-March to say like late April, early May in 25 will be a really significant point in time for crypto as a whole, and not just Bitcoin. So in the short term, don't let this thing bore you to sleep. It's usually what they like to do before they're going to make some sort of big move. So for me, I'm just keeping an eye on this 25K level over the next couple of weeks. And are they going to try and retest it? That's kind of what I'm thinking on Bitcoin. And I usually don't do a lot of these cycle studies on altcoins, just because Bitcoin kind of it really runs the show, and it's really the only thing in crypto that matters in my opinion. But I did do some brief studies on both Ethereum and our beloved Cripple. So I'll just show some studies that I threw together on that front. And then more specifically, within the past year and a half to 2 years, the eclipses have been more relevant, and that's because they've been occurring in signs of the financial axis. When you have both Taurus and Scorpio are considered the two signs in the zodiac that are of a financial nature. Taurus ruling things like currency and goods and the finer things in life that we love, and Scorpio on the other end ruling big money, power, and stuff like that. So when you have eclipses that are occurring in those signs, that's when like you should expect this to be expressed way more in the market. The first eclipse that came in Taurus, this lunar eclipse back in November of 2021, that marked the top, and the thing just ate shit. I mean, most of the markets just ate shit ever since then. And then we had the next set that came in May of 2022, and again, that's when Luna wet the bed, and just everything fell apart. And then yet another one, I think it was the lunar eclipse in November of last year when FTX went tits up. So the good side of that for the bulls is that this eclipse at the end of the month in Taurus is the last eclipse that we will see for the rest of the decade in the financial axis. And even then, I'm not expecting it to be as potent, because the lunar nodes, which are points in space where the moon crosses the ecliptic, which is the visible path of the sun from the perspective of Earth. When you have a new moon or a full moon that occurs between 12 and 18 degrees of those lunar nodes, those are the points when you get your eclipses. And the nodes have already moved out of the Taurus and Scorpio axis. You can still have eclipses that occur in the previous sign, but I don't expect it to be as potent. There's still points in time that I will take note of, but it's not going to really hit my radar as, oh shit, like this, it might go down to the degree that it did the past couple of years until like the early 1930s or so, whatever, 9 years from now. So 32, 33 or so. That's when, because this is an 18 and a half year cycle for the moon and the lunar nodes to complete a revolution in the zodiac. So it's a pretty slow cycle. And once we get past the end of October, all the rest of these markings and points in time, they're important, but it's not one where I'm expecting quite as much damage in the markets, at least. So this is This is my Ethereum study. Again, on 4-year cycles. This one's kind of interesting just because the alts have like, and Bitcoin too, have like a 2, potentially 3-step topping process. And then Ethereum, we have this signal, this first leg of it coming in around March or so of 24, which is going to be right before the halving starts. The biggest one hitting in June of 25, and then the final one before we expect the breakdown, pretty much the very, very end of 2025, where we're kind of expecting most of this to top out. But there are a lot, especially with altcoins too. If you look in previous cycles, where even though Bitcoin and a lot of the other alts in the market will run to new highs in the tail end of the year, there are some that will top out in the spring beforehand and they won't make a new high. Ethereum hasn't followed that pattern so far, but Cripple is one. So that's another one to keep an eye on. And seeing this major peak come in here too in June of 25, it's also aligning with a lot of these outer planets that are going to be changing signs. I don't even know how exactly that is going to be expressed in the world, but it's going to be a lot. So yeah, middle of 2025 and even into the spring, I'll be looking to probably take a lot of profit off the table with altcoins.